I've struggled with the traditional performance management system almost since I entered the professional workforce as an employee and clearly as a manager. And what didn't make sense to me was that we've developed this relatively complex system, takes a tremendous amount of work, time, and energy and resources. But when I was in it and in the traditional performance management system, and I question whether it's really performance management, I found that it wasn't focused on helping good people excel. It was really about helping or documenting poor performers. That we spent much more time just documenting poor performance and a lot less time really focusing on giving to the people who are really good, the ones you should be investing in, what they need. I think the other thing that I struggled with it is just the amount of work and time that the traditional system takes. You know, if you take a typical manager and they have 6 to 10 employees, and I would argue if they're really doing performance management right with each review, they ought to spend 2 to 4 hours on each review. So if you've gotten 10 employees at 4 hours, that's a week's work. You do that twice a year, it's 2 weeks lost every year just on documenting this. And the problem is, they're probably not doing a really good job anyways, because I know if they're like me, trying to recall and remember everything that your 10 employees did just is not something that's easy to do. So the traditional system does not put the burden, in my opinion, where it needs to be. And I shouldn't even call it a burden, because if the employee owns it, then the employee will, it shouldn't be a burden to them, it should be an opportunity to tell their story. And so, you know, when I look at what the traditional performance management system did, tremendous amount of work and cost, didn't accomplish what its goal was, which is help people get better. And quite frankly, I think it even was the opposite for many employees. I think it's very demotivating because the feedback isn't timely. And the fact that the owner of the effort really isn't the right person. And then there's one more issue, and I think this is the biggest of them all, and that is when you're using a rating system or you're using a number scale to rate somebody, you're just setting yourself up for unnecessary conflict, and that conflict then transitions into a lack of communication. So let me explain that. When you sit and you're going to evaluate somebody, you're going to put a number on it. I would guess typically managers put quite a bit of thought into that. And so let's say on a 1 to 5 scale, they believe the employee is a 3.5. The employee's thinking about it as well. And so they're going into the review thinking they performed somehow. If there's not an exact match there, if the employee and the boss aren't thinking on the same numbers, you've set yourself up for a conflict. And it can be over the smallest number. The boss thinks he's a 3.5, the employee thinks they're a 3.7. Boss comes in and says you're a 3.5. Now all communication is lost because the employee's upset because he didn't get the rating he thought he deserved, or she thought she deserved. And it's all over a number that's really meaningless in the end. And you lose all the opportunity to talk about how they can improve, what they ought to be doing to develop themselves, their strengths, their weaknesses, and it becomes about a number. And so that was probably, of all the things that frustrated me the most about a traditional performance management system, is this requirement for a number that in the end, people aren't numbers, people are people, and there's so much more to them. So why does Big Five work for us, and why does it work better? Well, the first thing is I think we get a better documentation and a better understanding of what the employee's strengths are, where their opportunities for improvement are, because it's done by the employee. And my experience is that the preponderance of employees, I would argue 90 to 95%, are probably more critical and tougher on themselves than their bosses ever will be. And they clearly know what they're doing more. How could a boss who has 10 employees possibly know what any one of them is doing at any time? The odds will tell you they can only know 10%, because that's all they have the time to do, of what's going on. The employee knows everything that they're doing. And as I said, most of them are pretty honest, and frankly, I've found are pretty tough. So when they talk about what they've done well, they probably have done it well. And when they talk about where they need some help, or they need improvement, or they need development, there's probably a reality that it really needs to be done. It also gives the employee the opportunity to tell their story. I'm a big believer in storytelling. I'm a big believer that there's a narrative to everything. And by allowing the employee over time to tell their narrative, not in once a year or once every 6-month increments, but on a monthly basis, and be able to sit down with their boss or put it in an email or into a document and communicate, this is what I'm doing over time, you're going to get a much greater understanding from the employee and on the part of the boss, the manager, as to what's happening. I think the second thing is it balances the work among the organization. I think it's a lot better that each employee in the organization is working on just themselves and their own documentation, as opposed to having a few people who are trying to document multiple numbers of people. So it balances the workload into a way that's more meaningful, and it becomes less about filling out a form and more about telling that story. The third thing that's worked for us is its simplicity. We've integrated into it the use of SMART goals, so people are working with goals that they're moving towards. Everybody has a common understanding periodically. For us, it's once a year on the goals and where they're headed, and now they can represent in their Big Five the progress they're making. And it's done through a simple system that we've put in place. It's taking all the complexity, the ratings. Frankly, it's taken the stress out of it for both the employee and the boss, and it allows us now to focus on the communication that's really important to the employee and to the manager. And they're having a dialogue as opposed to worrying about the rating or the stress of the meeting. I would argue there's a whole lot less tension in our company today than there was under the old system. So as part of our implementation of the Big Five, we did a pre-implementation survey, and we got feedback from our people of what they thought of our current system and some of their ideas on how we could improve it. And then after implementation, we did a post-survey, and that post-survey came about 6 months after we actually implemented. And the numbers have been just absolutely phenomenal, really on every measure. First of all, employee engagement in the process, much, much higher. People now take ownership in their performance, as opposed to being told what to do, they're driving it. The second thing is the quality of the communication between the managers and the employees. And this came from the employees themselves. They all said they're getting better feedback, they're getting better communication, they're having a better dialogue with their manager than they've ever had. And because the system has them communicating on a monthly basis, you're also getting it more frequently, which I think contributes to that quality. The third thing that we're getting is just employee satisfaction. The employees feel better about their jobs, and I'll argue that comes from the fact that they're telling a story and letting us know what's going on, and therefore they feel more valued. We now really do. I have a personal story to this. I have one employee, after we did their second or third Big Five, I learned how much they were really doing beyond what I understood them to be doing. So employees, when they can tell their story, when they can let us know what it is they're working on and have alignment with us that those are the right things, job satisfaction goes up, and I think engagement goes up as well with that. If you're thinking about how you want to do your employee performance system, if you want to make a change to it, let me give you something to think about. Because these kind of changes don't come easy, and I promise you, you will have people who will tell you it's not a good idea. I did. I was told from various levels that it wasn't a good idea. Because we're so ingrained in the old way of doing things, it's hard to accept something that's so dramatically different. But if you want to make gigantic changes or big steps forward, it takes a risk. And stepping out and trying this, I promise you, you are going to see improvement from your staff. You're going to see much greater engagement. You're going to see communication going up. You're going to see alignment of the business and the industry going up. And you're going to see expenses go down. That's been our experience with this program since we've implemented it. And one of the things that I have found most interesting and really sort of fascinating about it is, like any new approach, you're going to have naysayers that are going to come along because they've been told, not because they've bought in. What's been fun to watch those naysayers as they start to understand the benefit they have to them, whether they're an employee or they're in a management position, as they've started to see the benefits, how they've engaged with it, and now taken ownership of the program. I think if I came out to my team today and told them we were going to go back to the old way, I would have a revolt on my hands. I probably would have a mutiny, because the people have become so bought into it, and they understand now why it benefits them, that they don't want to see it disappear or as go to something else. One last thought. if you are considering doing this, one of the things I highly recommend you do is reach out and get some help with doing it, particularly if you're a mid-size or a larger company. You can read the book. It's such a simple system to understand that you can believe that you can do it on your own. And we got incredible value by engaging with Roger, getting some consultation help, getting somebody in to help guide us through the process. And I'll tell you, one of the big benefits of that was that it brought some neutrality to the training. In fact, we had very few managers or upper management in the room when Roger was doing the training. So it allowed people to ask honest questions so that we can answer them honestly. It allowed us to get real with them and them to get real with us. So we believe the adoption happened much faster. Also, we had somebody who knew the program and where it was headed better than we did. We thought we understood it, and you can understand it to a great degree from the book because it is simple. But in the end, having an expert engage with you to do it, I'm really glad we took the time to do that. And finally, implementing something new takes hands on deck. And if your people are busy with lots of other things, if you ask them to do this on top of everything else they're doing, you're going to wear them out, or it's going to distract them from doing what they should be doing. So this allowed us to get the right people doing the training, the right people helping us with the implementation, so that we were able to get it up to speed and implement it, and really became part of our culture and part of our total system, as opposed to being something that was just laid on top. So if you're going to do it, get the help you need to be able to implement it.